Welcome to the Life You Love podcast. We're your hosts, Grace Lemire and Erin Convertini. This podcast is for the dreamers and the doers, for the women who want to create a life they genuinely love waking up to. We believe that life's short, so let's build one we love.
We all have beliefs about money that shape how we view it, how we make it, and how we spend it. Sometimes these beliefs benefit us, allowing us to freely save, invest, and view money through a lens of abundance. But other times, these beliefs hold us back, causing us to save too much, spend everything we earn, or even self-sabotage money-making opportunities. Oftentimes, these negative money beliefs function in the background without us even noticing it. But as two women who are building wealth and sharing our journeys with thousands of you who are also building wealth, we wanted to use this episode to share a few common unproductive money beliefs that might be holding you back and give some suggestions for how to move through them so we can all have our richest year yet.
I love these types of almost like mindset episodes because when I listen to them, I feel like something always comes out of it that I wasn't expecting almost. I'm like, oh, I didn't even really think about the fact that I thought about money like that, or I didn't realize that that was holding me back. So I love these types of episodes where we just kind of say back and forth some different things that have impacted us. But we wanted to get started with talking about why your money mindset matters to begin with, because you think about money in terms of a lot of like tactical tips, like a lot of money episodes that we do on this podcast are more focused on money tips, but your money mindset is going to matter a lot more than the physical, like, oh, transferring money into your savings, or, oh, track your spending, or, oh, stick to your budget, because it does really impact how you show up and also how you earn money, which is at the forefront of your financial foundation. So your money mindset is so important for so many reasons.
I'm such a big fan, as you all know, if you listen for a long time, I'm such a fan of understanding the psychology behind things, like at a deeper level, because I think when we hear money mindset, it's like, oh, I should just think positively about money. And it's like, yes, but why? And like, for me, really understanding the impacts of those things helps me care more about things, right? It helps me take it more seriously. And we've talked about this in an episode before, and I can't remember which one. And maybe as I'm talking about it, you'll remember, because Erin, one thing about Erin, she remembers every single episode we run. She's like, back in May of 2025, we put this episode out. I'm like, she knows what we put out and when we put it out. I don't know. She got a catalog in her brain, but we did an episode kind of talking about this and how your beliefs are formed. And I think it's really important to cover this. So you hear this idea that your beliefs create your reality. And this idea used to be very confusing to me because I'm like, how can something I believe or think about physically create my reality? Like, that doesn't make any sense that if I believe, the world is my oyster, that all of a sudden the world is an oyster. It doesn't really make sense. But what this actually means is that in the brain, we have something called the reticular activating system. And it basically filters your environment to absorb what your brain wants to pay attention to. So when you think about, if you just look around the room that you're in, wherever you are, or if you're driving in a car and you look around everywhere, there's so much stimuli around you that your brain is trying to take in, and it can't possibly take it in. Like, I'm looking around my living room. It's like the sun is shining. I can hear, something in my apartment, my little air purifier. It's like, I can feel things I'm sitting on. I can see grass and cars outside my apartment. Like, I can see all these different things. My brain can't possibly absorb all of that. So it filters it through your reticular activating system. And so then the question after that is, okay, well, then how does your brain determine what should be filtered and what shouldn't? Your brain's job is to keep you feeling safe. Part of that is those instincts to like look both ways before you cross the street an extra time. But part of that is also affirming beliefs that you have. So if you have a belief that, money doesn't grow on trees and I will never have enough, your brain, this is fascinating too, your brain doesn't actually know the difference between positive and negative. Your brain can't identify, oh, that's a negative belief, I'm not going to pay attention to it. It just knows, oh, you've said it a lot or you've heard it a lot growing up. So it holds on to that belief, and then it uses that belief to filter your environment, because doing so does not challenge your own perspectives that you have or your own beliefs, which creates a feeling of safety, right? Like when you think, oh, I will never have enough, and then you see something in your environment that maybe affirms that, it feels comforting in a way, versus when people say to you, well, why do you believe that? Why do you think you'll never have enough? Or an opportunity shows up that would provide you with more abundance than you could ever imagine. You get that feeling of like, ooh, like something about that feels like a stretch. because it's challenging the belief that you have. So that's how the beliefs end up creating your reality, or basically how you perceive your reality. I mean, we know perception is reality. How you see it is how you believe that it is.
Yeah, and I think it's such an important conversation too, because we probably discount how important our upbringing is when it comes to what we believe we're capable of when it comes to money. Because, okay, if you grew up like middle class, like your parents both work, they both have a 9 to 5 job, they're working that 9 to 5 job until they retire. Like that was very much so my upbringing, right?
Mhm.
So you go into your adult life with that being your belief about money, which is that you work a 9 to 5 job, you save maybe a little bit of money, you invest a little bit of money into your 401k until the age of 65, 67, whatever that age may be. And then you get to retire. And that's just sort of your belief about money. But I think no one sort of questions that. And that's why it can be so hard or seemingly quote unquote like impossible to move social classes because if your beliefs don't change, then your ability to kind of like create something different for yourself can be very challenging. And that's why this conversation is so important to begin with. One thing that I always think about when it comes to like understanding your belief about money, more so on the income side, is when you see someone doing something that's a little bit unfamiliar to you, is your first instinct to assume that it's fake? And I think that everyone listening to this should really like ponder that for a second and think like, okay, do I scroll through social media and be like, oh my gosh, that's fake. Like there's no way that's real. And I'm not saying that there's not things out there that are flat out untrue or that you shouldn't question them and use your best judgment. But I do think it says a lot about your money beliefs if that is your first instinct all the time. Because I think that as an adult, I've done a good job of training myself to assume something is true and to go seek out more information to like affirm that. You know what I mean? Like if I see someone who's like, "Oh, I made $50,000 this month doing affiliate marketing." My brain is not going to say automatically that's fake. My brain is going to say, "Oh, interesting. Let me go like deep dive into that. Let me go like look at this girl's profile. Let me go see what her incentive would be to tell me that information or whatever it may be." But I think that that's a really good judge of what's your overarching money belief, especially when it comes to earning money, because that's going to be a lot of what we talk about in today's episode.
Mhm. I posted a video about this and I feel like some people took it wrong. I was like, maybe I didn't make my point clear, but I feel like when you see on social media, I was basically saying how when you look at people from the outside, what people portray on the outside is not always an indicator of what is going on with their finances behind the scenes. And I used to always think, for example, oh, if someone is driving a really nice car, they must have so much money. But that's not always the case, right? Some people just have a larger car payment or their family helped contribute to their car. There's nothing wrong with either of those situations. It's not my place to judge how they acquired that car. But I had to retrain my brain because I would see people with, like, yeah, designer bag or designer clothes or whatever. And I would think, oh my gosh, like they really got it like that, you know? And then that would kind of change, not necessarily change my perception in a negative way, but what do we use as like status signals basically? And how are we perceiving that? And when I thought, okay, what I actually admire is not how much designer somebody's dripped out in, but what do their finances actually look like? You can see that from the outside. My point in the video is when you're seeing people, you have to kind of like take it with a grain of salt and understand that someone's external appearance does not always indicate what's going on with their finances or the things they have doesn't always mean they got them in a financially responsible manner. But I think that's another thing to look at with your money beliefs when you're looking at people on social media. Like, do you see people who are driving, a really nice car and think, oh, it's got to be daddy's money? Or like, oh, they must have acquired it in some sort of unethical way. Or, you know, I see people immediately default to like, yeah, they must have like some sort of, I don't know how you would describe it. I don't want to say the term. People will be like, oh, do they have an like
Yeah.
a sus way of making money, you know what I mean? Which I mean, there's nothing. Do your thing, you know what I mean? But I see so many people like, and I've gotten it on my own content where I've talked about my income. People are like, must be daddy's money, or when I've talked about saving for a house, they're like, she definitely has like a sus way of making money or something. But how do you perceive people, and what assumptions are you coming to about their work or about their finances? And I think that that's such an indicator too of where your money beliefs are and what you believe to be true about money, because you also don't really know much about the people that you're seeing online, but yet we all default to certain assumptions, and I feel like a lot of those assumptions are based on the beliefs that we have around money.
And I also think that that ties really well into the topic of a scarcity mindset. And when you talk about money mindset, the scarcity mindset buzzword always comes up, but we want to kind of like just kind of reset on what that actually means. A scarcity mindset is a deep seated belief that resources are limited. However, how this often shows up can be a lot of different ways. And some of them can be maybe you hoard all of your money because you're afraid that later on you're not going to have any money, or maybe you always feel guilty for non-essential purchases and splurging on yourself like makes you feel really guilty. But I think it can also show up as almost feeling like threatened by other people's successes, or kind of like what you were saying, like your gut instinct is always to kind of deflect from someone else's success. If you're scrolling on social media and you're seeing someone talk about their career or their finances and it kind of makes you get a wall up or you feel threatened by it, that can often be like the case of the scarcity mindset, and understanding like, okay, where does that actually come from? But I also feel like on the topic of scarcity mindset that sometimes we can go like too far into this, and there does have to be a balance there, because I feel like I see a lot of content on social media talking about scarcity mindsets where it's like if you're investing in your 401k or if you're trying to pay down your mortgage early, like those are examples of a scarcity mindset because you're just assuming that you're not going to be rich later. And it's like, okay, but as we're going to talk about in today's episode, like money is such a tool for freedom and flexibility in your life. And those are good examples of, hey, I'm trying to build more freedom and flexibility into my life later. And this is how I'm going to do it. So I also think that it is kind of a double edged sword with the whole scarcity mindset thing.
Yeah, and I also think too, you can't out earn a scarcity mindset. Like more money is not going to just like eradicate beliefs you've had your entire life. And I say that as someone who I have gone from making $20 an hour 4.5 years ago to significantly more now. And there are still moments to this day where money beliefs, negative money beliefs or unproductive ones show up that I'm like, ooh, like the same way that I'm trying to think of like a good example. Like I had a fear when I made $20 an hour of everything falling apart and hitting like zero, which logically that would not have made sense because before I made any big money moves, I made sure I had an emergency fund. Like I'm on top of my savings. You all know that. But I was like, oh my gosh, what if everything falls apart and it goes to zero and I end up literally broke, like $0 in my bank account? Like, oh my gosh. I literally I fake a lot more than like now than I did then. I still sometimes will look at my emergency fund that's now fully funded based on what my expenses are now and the savings I have and the investments and whatever. And I'll still be like, and what if my business collapsed tomorrow and everything fell apart and I lost all my money? Like earning more did not change that belief. Do I have those feelings less now? Yes. But there are still things that trigger that money belief sometimes to pop up where I'm like, ooh. And so I think sometimes people think too that when it comes to the scarcity stuff, oh, as soon as I make more money, this will go away and I won't feel scarcity anymore because I'll have so much abundance. But the reality is, you're still going to have that belief if you haven't done anything to work on it. And I mean, I shouldn't say if you haven't done anything to work on it because I work on my money beliefs and they're still there. They still pop up again in less frequency, but they take time to eradicate. And on that note, going back to what we were saying earlier, you're talking about like your upbringing. And that's why at the beginning I said too, these beliefs are formed based on what you tell yourself, but also what you've heard. So a lot of them are probably things that you don't even remember hearing necessarily, like things that I think they say something about, and don't quote me on this, but I think it's something about your money beliefs are formed by like the age of 7 or something like that. And so I don't remember being very conscious at age 7. Like I can't really recall much from like before then. So I don't know what I was hearing growing up necessarily. So then I'm looking at my money beliefs now and I'm like, where did that come from? And the truth is, it doesn't always come from you. It's not always things that you've said to yourself. So if you've heard these things from other people your entire life, and now you're like me, and let's say you're 27, yeah, it's not going to go away overnight. It's going to take like consistent effort to kind of turn some of the money beliefs around, and earning more. I mean, it's not necessarily going to just eradicate them either.
Yeah, and I think going back to your upbringing and specifically like how you were raised from a social class perspective, like if you grow up middle class as opposed to growing up from a rich family, right? So I'm assuming most of us listening to this podcast did not grow up from a rich family. Maybe you did. I don't know. Your upbringing can again give you beliefs around how much earning is possible, right? And those limiting beliefs can keep you playing very small. So, for example, if you're trying to increase your income and you're like, well, I want to start a side hustle and I really just want to make $300 a month extra for my side hustle. And you're kind of reinforcing that in your brain, like, oh, I really just want to make $300. Like, that's all. I really just want to make an extra $300 a month. That can keep you playing at that level. And I think a lot of us do that where they're like, oh, well, that would be so amazing to make an extra $300. Like, that's all I want to make. You're like almost afraid to admit that you want to make more. And that's something that I think is really important to remember too. It's like, okay, say it. Say you want to make an extra 5K a month. Say you want to make an
Mhm.
extra 10K a month. Tell yourself, like, no, my goal is for this not to be my side hustle, my side business. I want to make this my full time thing. Like, admit that and be okay admitting that. Because again, if you also don't have the negative money beliefs around earning more money is bad, being wealthy is bad, people who have a bunch of money are inherently evil or whatever it may be, you should feel okay saying those things and admitting that. And that's also why I'm such a big proponent of like setting big goals. And that can be really hard to do early on. Like if you're just starting out doing a side hustle, a side business, you've never made a conscious effort to increase your income outside of your job before, I think you probably will find yourself in that trap. Like, no, I really just want to make an extra $300 a month from my side hustle. Like, that's all I want to make. No, you probably want more. And that's
Mhm.
okay to admit.
And I also think with that too, I think about who I surround myself with. And when you have big money goals and you surround yourself with other people who have big money goals, like one of my friends who lives here, we will send each other real estate in Florida. And it's always like these $1 million homes. And we were actually just talking about this earlier today. And I was like, no, when we're sending these back and forth, I very much am like, I love this home and it wouldn't be my first home because I have other goals for my first home, but like, I will buy that one day. I will buy a $1 million home one day. I will buy this really, really, really nice house one day. I will. And when we send each other that, like, we're fully both in that mindset. But if I had just said, oh, like, if I hadn't been true to what my actual goal was, and I just said, oh, I just want to own a little home. It's okay if it's a little one bed, one bath. It's okay, how would she know how to support me in getting what I actually want? Same thing with her. She's told me certain things that she wants, right? Like being honest about, yeah, this is my goal. This is what I want to do. And so I'm over here, wheels turning. I hired her the other day to come and work with me for a content shoot because she wants to get into content more, right? Then she just made a few $100 doing that, right? So it's like, it's a whole idea of like closed mouths don't get fed and they don't get supported either if you're not opening up and sharing what you actually want. So the more you can own that and be like, yeah, I actually want this, you also invite other people in to be able to support you on getting what you actually want. So I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also just the case of closed mouths don't get fed thing. I love
Mhm.
that. I think that that's so important to remember. But okay, let's go into some of our money beliefs that we have adopted, or some of these might be positive and some of them are negative. It's either a money belief that we have adopted or one that we had to let go of in order
Mhm.
to find success, build wealth in our 20s, all of that. I can go with my first one, which this is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. And it's definitely more so on the making more money piece because this can trip a lot of people up and it can make a lot of people feel really stuck. But it's the belief that everything is a numbers game. Like if you have a goal, break it down and understand the numbers behind that goal. For example, I've said this on the podcast so many times, but I really want to make $1 million in a calendar year at some point in my career, at some point soon, not like 20 years from now when $1 million is the equivalent to like $300,000. You know what I mean? Like, I want to make $1 million sometime soon. And when you really break it down and remember that everything is a numbers game, it makes your goals feel so much more realistic or
Mhm.
possible. So, one thing that helps me with this is focusing on the input, not the output. So, the output would be the $1 million. Okay, what's the input? the input would be I need to create more content around my offerings. I need to refine my landing page so that my conversion rate goes up. I need to increase my click through rate between my content and my landing page so that the more people are physically clicking on my landing page. Focusing on those inputs, like, okay, how many pieces of content am I actually getting out every single month related to my offerings? And why this is so effective is because focusing on the input allows you to hit your goals much more calculated than focusing on the output. So if my goal is 30 pieces of content per month about my offer, I can hit that with much more like I know that I can hit that because I can focus on that, but I cannot control how many people physically purchase my product at the end of the month, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So that's something that's been helping me so much lately is just remembering like any goal is possible because it's all just a numbers game.
Well, and I think that helps you back out of it and create a plan basically. Because if I said, I remember when I first wanted to make my first $10,000 a month with freelancing, and I had a business coach at the time, and she said kind of similar thing. She's like, just do the math. She's like, back it up. You need 4 clients at $2,500 a month. She's like, you have clients at more than that. You can get 4 clients at $2,500 a month. But when you back it out that way, it's like, okay, now I know what I'm aiming for. So I'm not aiming for, because making $10,000 in a month is like, it's specific, but it's also kind of vague in a way if you don't understand how you're gonna get there versus if I say, "Yeah, I wanna sell 1,000 of my $10 templates." It's okay, now my goal is how can I get like, let me look at what the conversion rate is on my template typically, and then, okay, now I'm gonna do the numbers backwards and say, "I need to get this many views in order to probably guarantee this." I think because people don't know where to start, but I think backing out of it like that really helps because you creates a plan.
And focusing on the input allows you to think even bigger with your goals, in my opinion. So let's say your goal is to make $30,000 a month from whatever you're selling. Okay, well, if you focus on the input instead of the output, your input could be so awesome that by the end of the month, you actually made $40,000. But if you're so focused on that $30,000 number, you can't even dream bigger than your goals, if that makes sense. And it also just becomes super defeating of like, okay, I got to the end of the month and I only made 10,000 instead of 30,000. So why do I even try next month because I'm nowhere close to my goal. But if your goal is 30 content pieces a month or whatever, 30 cold emails per week or whatever your input number is, focusing on that just gives you so much more control over the end result.
Mhm. I think it's more motivating too because you're focusing on the aspect that you can control and iterating and improving there. So, okay, my first money belief that I had to like get rid of, and I think a lot of people probably can relate to this, is that, well, I guess this is not one I had to get rid of. This one I had to adopt. I was like, hold on. Money isn't bad. Money is a neutral resource. Money does not have a moral, it's not a moral thing. Like someone having less money does not make them less than, and someone having more money does not make them better. And I think that in our society and our culture, that I think it can be a subconscious bias that a lot of us have, which is not productive to how we view other people as well. But I also think that it impacts how we view making money and what we do with our money. There is a book, it's called Rich as F. I won't cuss on this podcast. I don't even cuss anyways. Rich as F by Amanda Francis. And there's one line that I forget exactly how she says it, but I've kind of just like summed it up. She basically says, change happens when good women are well resourced. And that to me, that shifted, that book is life changing. I think everyone should read it, but it shifted how I looked at money because I used to feel this guilt for wanting to make a lot of money. And I couldn't identify why I felt that way until I realized that there must be some sort of negative connotation happening in my mind between earning more and like morality or how I look at someone who makes more money. And I think I had to realize I was associating it with like greed or, people who earn more being less generous or people who earn more looking down on people that earn less. Or like there was some sort of mismatch there. But when I read that book and I read that line, I thought, you know what? Actually, the change that I want to make happen in the world, I could actually do so much more if I make more money. Like I can donate more. I can start the, foundations that I want to start. I can help people so much more. And I will say as I have earned more money, that is something that is so freeing to be able to do. Like, I have given more money this year than I have in previous years, and it has been so rewarding to be able to just say, like, someone needs help, here's $500. Like, that is so exciting. And I'm like sitting here, I'm like, wait a second. I'm now the person that I used to look at a couple years ago who makes more money, and I'm not greedy, you know? And so it's rewired how I think about it. But I also think that it's important with this belief of like, are you thinking of money equals bad or people with more money equals bad people? I think it's really helpful to think about what your threshold for like quote unquote rich is, or like where does that threshold start to break for you? And why do you think that is the case? For example, those videos that people will be like, what was one thing growing up that if other people had it, you thought they were rich? And, like, now as an adult, you're like, "Okay." For me, it was like if your house was 2 floors because I grew up in, like, a one-story house. So I'm like, if you had an upstairs, I thought you got it like that, Like, or if you had, like, a finished basement, I'm like, "You had money," whatever. Now I'm older and I'm like, "Okay, these weren't billionaires." You know what I mean? They were regular people, and I'm like, why did I think that way? Where was my threshold? And I used to think, well, people who make six figures are so rich. And I would view that as bad. And I have to get to the root of why is that? What about that? Is it that I thought that having a nice house made you greedy or made you out of touch or made you whatever? Did I think that six figures equaled like the pinnacle of wealth and therefore, or did I think that people who made $100,000 didn't have useful jobs? Like, it's like, what is the reason behind that? Like, what's the root of it? Because I think that will help people figure out why do you view like more money equals bad?
What I thought people were rich if they had growing up was if their parents shopped at like the name brand grocery stores and had
Oh,
all of the
yeah.
name brand snacks. Like if you had Oreos in your house, I'm like, you are rich. Like you guys are rich. Because my mom would
Yeah.
always buy like the generic ones. And like
Mhm.
now looking back, that's so stupid. But yeah, that was definitely mine. But I think it's a good kind of like exercise to do in your brain of when you think of a wealthy person, what do you think of? Visualize that. What does a wealthy person in your brain look like? Because growing up and then transitioning into an adult, the only wealthy, quote unquote, wealthy people that I saw as a child were people who were very like flashy with money. And again, back to your point, you don't know the ins and outs of their financial situation. They could be wealthy, they could just prioritize that and spend more on that. But as I became an adult and started to learn more about money, the more I realized that money is a tool for freedom, not a indicator of status or worth, like you're saying. And that's where I think a lot of the like, well, money is bad, being rich is bad, it's greedy, it's shallow, it's materialistic. It's because the view that you have of a wealthy person might not be completely accurate.
Mhm.
And now I view a wealthy person as someone who has a really strong financial foundation. They're dressed in very, very normal clothes. They have a lot of time freedom. They get to do whatever they want. They prioritize spending time with their family, things like that. And I think that that has helped me so much in understanding, okay, why do I even want to be wealthy to begin with? And what's the point of all of this?
Yeah, and I think that this money is bad belief or that you believe money is not like a neutral resource. I find this is a very sneaky money belief to where you can consciously say, yeah, like I don't think more money is bad or I don't think money, more money, more problems. Like, no, I don't think that. But then when let's say you find out that someone in your life makes, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, how do you perceive them? Does that change how you perceive them? Or, when you find out what someone's house sold for, and let's say it's way more than you thought, do you say, does it give you pause or do you feel a feeling of jealousy or a feeling of like what feelings come up when you think about, again, like when you envision a wealthy person is to you, what feelings come up? Or when you hear about, the financial ins and outs of someone who may be wealthier than you, what feelings does that bring up? Because that money is bad. It's not like a blatant, like, oh, yeah, I think, the more money I have, the more problems I'm going to have. That's a blatant thing. But to be like, ooh, I found out that so and so made that much money. Like, he must be doing some shady stuff to get that. Or like, he probably is like, just like a really mean boss. He must be just like kind of trampling over people at his job in order to get so high that he could make that. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like pause and think about it because it might reveal more than you think.
Definitely. The next one on my list, I know you have on your list as well. Grace and I kind of like created our own list and then we made the outline based on that. And we had like one that was kind of similar. And that is the belief that money has no ceiling. And this is something that you really need to think long and hard about. Like, money has no ceiling. There is no cap, literally no cap to the amount of money that you can earn. And this is a concept that it's really hard to comprehend. And if you don't comprehend it, I think that this is where some of like the scarcity mindset stuff that we talked about earlier, with if you're feeling threatened by other people's successes, or you see someone who is very well off financially, or they had a big win financially, and you immediately feel like guarded or threatened by that, it's probably because like you're not comprehending in your brain, or it's not your instinct to comprehend that money truly has no ceiling for the amount of money that you can earn. Wealth is not a zero sum game. Grace and I can both be wealthy. Even if we're literally, Grace and I sell the exact same product. Okay. Literally the exact same product. Like,
Hmm.
obviously we like made our
Yeah.
own, and like they have different features and functionality, but we sell the exact same product. And Grace's successes are not my failures. My successes are not Grace's failures. It's not a zero sum game. And I think with the whole money has no ceiling thing, it's also important to shift your thinking from, okay, well, I trade my time for money, to money comes to me when I provide value. And I don't necessarily have to work more hours to provide more value. I say this a lot, but like, you can provide a small amount of value to a large amount of people, or you can provide a large amount of value to a small amount of people. So when you're thinking of like, okay, money is an exchange of value, money comes to me when I provide value, who am I providing value for, and how much value am I providing? So for example, I sell my budget template. My strategy, that is my only offer. I don't have a high ticket offer. I'm not really interested in developing like a high ticket course or something like that to provide a lot of value to a smaller amount of people. My strategy has been, okay, I can provide a small amount of value to a lot of people. People who buy my budget template, they get a lot of value from it. I get comments and DMs all the time saying, I've been using it for years. I love it. It's changed my finances. But in the grand scheme of things, it's still a small amount of value. It's a $10 product. However, you can still make a lot of money providing a small amount of value if it's a large enough group of people.
Yeah. I think this, and yeah, this is be a very similar one here, but one of the money beliefs that I had to adopt was that money is an exchange of energy or value, because I used to sometimes see people charging for things. I'd be like, how can they justify that price, or why is something, or I struggled to believe, well, I could never charge a client like $4,000 a month. Like, there's nothing I could provide that would be that valuable, or why would they value it at that? But then I realized, like, it's not about, because I was operating in the hourly sense where I would think, okay, like you were saying, oh, well, if I charge them $4,000 a month and I know dang well this takes me less than 10 hours a week, I'm like, ooh, I'm like, then you really back that out into an hourly rate. I was like, that's really high. Like, how could I command a rate that high? Because it's not about the hours that you're putting in. It's about the fact that you're creating something. Let's say in my case, you're creating content for a client that then brings in users for their app. Then they get users on their app. Those people, the lifetime value of a customer there is significant. So for them, that's a great exchange of value. They pay you to create content that ends up generating them revenue for the long term. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like I just struggled with feeling like when I was spending money, I'm giving it up. And when people are paying me for something, they're just like giving up money. But it's like, no, you're making an exchange. Like when you pay for something, it's because you believe that what you're buying is of equal or greater value than what you're paying for it, or because you like absolutely need it, right? Like I don't go to the pharmacy and pick up my prescription and be like, oh yes, like $50 for my for my medication, right? Like it's because I need that. So I pay the money for it. But typically when you're buying something, you're like, oh yeah, shirt for $50. Yeah, I think this shirt is worth $50. Or wow, that's such a steal of a price. I can't believe it's only $50. And so you pay for it. And in exchange, you're getting an item that brings you joy, that brings you functionality, that brings you fun, that whatever it might be. It's the same thing with services or businesses or things like that, they're going to make you money.
Content is such a good example of money being an exchange of value, not an exchange of how much time you're spending on it. And this is something that I struggle with all the time too. And it's the benefit of having a manager negotiating on your behalf, because I think, especially as women, we really struggle to like negotiate for what we're worth. And I am so bad, like literally so bad at it.
Mhm.
I have not one negotiating uh,
Bone in your
bone
body.
in my butt. Like, not that's not in my list of skills. That's why I have a manager. But I submitted a brand campaign the other day and I texted it to my manager and I was like, "Can you please give me feedback on this because I feel like it's not high enough effort for how much money they're paying me because of how quickly I was able to do it." Because they just wanted like a talking to camera video. There were a couple of little overlays, but if you create content, like talking to camera videos do not take a lot of time to film at all. And I was like, I'm really just struggling with submitting this because I feel like it's not high enough effort for how much money they're paying me. And she sent me an audio message back that was like, Erin, you have to remember, what is the brand's alternative to social media content ads? The alternative is them renting a studio, hiring a creative director, hiring an actress, putting together this entire set to film a commercial. That's the alternative. And it's like when you put that into perspective, it's like this company is still getting so much value out of paying me this rate and paying me what I'm worth, despite how long it seemingly takes me to prop up my phone and film the video. So I think that that's like a good kind of parameter of like, yeah, charging what you're worth. And
Yeah.
also I should learn how to negotiate because
I always think about when I was doing more freelance work like in the beginning, and I remember I was charging hourly for things, and then I started switching over to retainer models. And people would ask me, why are you switching to a retainer model? Like clients would, but then also as I started, running my freelance course and talking with students and things, people would ask me as well, like, how do I explain this in a way where I feel like, oh my gosh, yeah, retainer model is like the best way to go. And I would explain it as like an exchange of value, but I would always give the example of like, let's say you ordered a cake for a birthday and you're not going to tell the baker, okay, yeah, I'm gonna pay you $40 an hour to bake that cake. I don't care how long you spent baking the dang cake and frosting it, whatever. I'm coming to pay you because I want to buy a cake. I want to walk out of here with a finished product. I don't need you to tell me that it took you 7.2 hours to bake and make the cake, right? Or if you go to make that cake and all of a sudden you go to frost it and you don't like how the shade of pink turned out and now you want to scrape it off and try again. What's that got to do with me? Why am I paying extra now because of that, right? Because you made a mistake on your end. No, you're paying for a cake. Same thing with a hairdresser. You don't show up to your hairdresser and you say, it only took you an hour to cut my hair, girl. So $20 an hour is what no, like you understand that you're paying for the value they're providing, the consultation, their knowledge, their skill set, the products, the vibe of the salon. Get value from the experience that you have when you like go to the salon or something. And so I think if you can get yourself in that mindset of money is an exchange of value, you'll realize that you can actually command a higher rate for a lot of things that you offer. You'll realize that being paid well is actually really fair. And I think that is really important, especially if you want to get into business and you want to start charging and actually like growing into, a six figure or multiple six-figure business.
100%. I will go into my last one and then I think you have one more.
Mhm.
This is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. Actually, over the last couple of years, I feel like I've had this mindset and I've really had to shift my mindset from when I was growing up. So it's that your housing is an investment in yourself and investments in yourself have the highest ROI. And the whole like investments in yourself having the highest ROI thing, that is only true if you trust yourself to execute and do what you say you're going to do. And they say, like, you build confidence from doing the things that you say you're going to do. So over time, I think you need to build that conviction in yourself that, like, no, if I make an investment in myself, I know that it's going to have the highest ROI because I know that I'm going to execute like I said I would. I know I'm going to show up consistently every day. But when it comes to the housing piece, I feel like this definitely came from how I was raised. My mom would always say, like, you never want to be house poor. Like, your housing should be a very moderate expense. It should never be like a huge, huge line item in your budget. You always want to live within your means. And obviously, your housing is going to be the biggest line item in your budget, and it's going to be whether rent versus buy. I'm not talking like home ownership versus renting here. Regardless, your housing is going to be the largest line item in your budget. So I think when I was like very early on out of college, I definitely took that mindset. But as I'm growing and increasing my income and trying to build wealth, I've really seen the value of viewing my housing as an investment in myself and making it a category that I actually splurge on in my budget, not trying to get the absolute cheapest rent. Or when I purchased my house, I spent more money than I wanted to on this house. Originally, I was like, I had a certain budget, and then I was like, no, you know what? Like, this is where I'm going to live for the next 5 years. This is where I'm going to run my business for the next 5 years. And even if you don't work from home, like your housing is where you spend all of your restorative time, your sleep time. It's where you digest after a very busy and chaotic day. It's your calm space. So I think it's just important to, yeah, view your housing as an investment into yourself and into your environment, your peace of mind, your mental health. And then that's going to have the highest return.
I think this goes to for other investments in yourself that are important to you. Like, let's say you are someone who, like, the gym is really your like sanctuary. It's like, okay, if you're going to a Planet Fitness, and I've never been to a Planet Fitness, I just see the memes about it, so pardon if this isn't the case, but it's like it's chaotic, and I feel like I always see the memes of, like, people, like, swinging from machines and things. I'm sure it doesn't happen all that often, but, like, it's like if you go to Planet Fitness and you're like, "Yeah, like, I don't actually really love being here. This doesn't feel like a really beneficial experience, and, like, I want the gym to be my sanctuary, and, like, I wanna be able to go there and unwind and cold plunge and sauna and da 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 da." Okay, if you can, budget for it, make the investment in yourself if you feel like the ROI is going to be there. Or if you're like, oh, I know that when I, work from home, I get nothing done. It's like, okay, get a co working membership. Like, how can you make those investments in yourself? I agree that housing is such like an investment in yourself because the kind of work that we do, I think, especially, it matters to a degree. Like I'm here literally all the time. Like I'm always in my apartment. That's probably bad. I should probably get out more. But it's like you are always there. But it's like where do you spend the most time? And how can you like invest more in that and making those things actually enjoyable and not feeling as guilty about it, just budgeting for it. And obviously make sure your savings, investments and things are covered. But like, yeah, how can you allow yourself to invest more in the things that pour back into you?
The gym one is so important. When I moved into my house, I started going to a Planet Fitness because it's right down the road from my house and it's literally $15 a month. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'll go to the place that's close. But that's exactly how I felt. I was in and out so quickly. And when I was there, it just felt very like chaotic. And I was rushing through my workout because I didn't really enjoy being there. And then I would spend literally 23 of my other hours of the day in my house because I was trying to get in and out of the gym so quickly. But going into 2026, I invested in a more like wellness club. It's a little bit further. It takes me 15, 20 minutes to get there. But I literally go in the morning and then I sit there in the co working space for the entire morning and get all of my admin stuff done. I'm so productive there.
Hmm.
I see people there. My friends go there. So it's like a social aspect as well. They have events, there's tennis courts and like a pool outside in the summertime and everything like that. So yeah, those investments in yourself, they do matter so much. And viewing them as investments, I do think is beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and the last one on my list is a belief that I feel like people need to get rid of, or that's like an unproductive belief, and it's that understanding money is hard. And I think that this comes up so much. I think there's this part in adulthood where you start to become more aware of your finances, right? Like you get your first full-time job, you're making your own money. You're thinking about what can I afford with rent? Your employer's asking about 401k contributions, or you want to invest some of your after tax income, or you're starting to pay off your debt. You're getting a car insurance, health insurance, all these different things. And I think that sometimes instead of seeking to understand, people just opt out entirely. They're like, it's too hard to understand. And so then they just don't do anything, right? They just contribute to their 401k, but they have no idea how much they're contributing, what like where the money is going, what it's being invested in, or they're just making minimum payments on their debt when maybe in reality they could afford to contribute more. And maybe if they had learned more, they would want to contribute more, but they're just so overwhelmed by the idea of learning more that they just kind of take a step back and opt out. And when I used to do strictly personal finance content, and also when I used to write for a student loan search and comparison tool. The whole premise was to help people be in less debt by understanding their loan options. I would see this with people that like would comment on stuff on my content, on this company's content. And I came up so much with debt where people would just say, like, I don't know what's going on with my loan. So, like, that's none of my business. And I'm like, ah, and I'm like, why don't you learn? They're like, oh, it's just so confusing. It's just too confusing. I don't know the difference between my federal and my private and the interest rates and all these things. Like, I don't understand all of it. But I think we have to remember that learning anything new for the first time is always difficult. And there's always fears around those things. Like the first time you learn to drive, or, when you're cooking a new recipe, or like, I don't know, just doing your makeup for the first time. There's so many different things that it's not gonna just like be an innate skill to be really wise with your finances off the jump. But I think that it's just gonna slow you down if you don't take time to learn. And I will say, with the idea that like understanding money is hard, I'm like, what about it feels hard? And instead of just viewing all of it as hard, can you just take it like one step at a time? And like break it down a little bit more, because just viewing it as hard and opting out is not like helping you actually move forward.
I feel like financial literacy needs a major rebrand to financial discipline. I talk
Mhm.
about this a lot on my channel, but if you are sitting here saying, like, I don't understand money, I don't have that financial literacy, I wasn't taught it growing up, it feels like a lot to all of a sudden become financially literate. Like you just said, a lot of people have the mindset of learning about money is really hard. There's so much to learn. You have to understand all of your debt and like how to start investing and all of these things. But if you understand that being good with your money is only really about 10 to 20% of your energy being focused on that financial literacy piece, and the other 80 to 90% is just financial discipline, it becomes so much less, it becomes a lot less overwhelming to get good with your money. I recommend this book all the time if you are feeling like you're not financially literate or there's things about money that you don't know. The book is called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I know we've both read it. It's like a very basic personal finance book. It's one of the most popular, but why I love it so much specifically for this use case is it does a really good job of just giving you the baseline financial foundation that you need. It's going to cover everything: budgeting, saving, investing, debt. You're gonna leave that book feeling financially literate, and you should leave that book being like, I know everything that there is to know about money, and now the only thing that I need to do is be disciplined about where my money is actually going every single month. So yeah, I hope that helps with the whole
Yeah.
like financial literacy versus yeah.
I think like that with this topic too, and I did this too to a degree. I've always been like very money minded. I've always really enjoyed I always love money. I just like love the topic. I love thinking about making money. I
Same.
love saving money. Like I've always been that way since I was literally a child. I had my first checking account when I was like 12 years old, and I saved and saved and saved all the money I had been given for my birthdays, or, anything. When my grandma would give me $5, I would save it. Or if I'd be at the grocery store with my parents and they would pay in cash, I would say, can I get like the coins from the change? And I would set it aside. And then I deposited like $720, I think it was, into my checking account at age 12. And I was so pleased with myself. Like I've just always been that way. But the thing is, neither of us know everything about every money related topic. And one thing I had to kind of understand was that yes, there are hard to understand topics or things that may be more challenging depending on, your expertise and your, whatever your understanding is at the moment. However, a lot of that is very unnecessary for just the average person to be financially literate, if that makes sense. So, for example, do I understand what's going on with like Bitcoin? No. Do I need to? No. Do I need to understand like how to day trade? No. That's not relevant to me and my finances. I need to understand how to budget, how to save, how to track my expenses. I need to understand how interest works on debt, on mortgages, on, on different types of loans. I need to understand those things. I don't need to be in the nitty-gritty of every single financial thing in the planet. Like, it's not relevant to me. So if you're thinking about, oh, in order for me to be financially literate, I have to understand every financial topic under the sun, that's just not true. And then I think sometimes then we look at it as, oh my gosh, that's so hard because there's so much to learn. But when you actually look at what is relevant to you to be able to be financially successful, it's not as much. And that book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, goes over what is relevant for like a a normal person. And then once you have that foundation, picking up the other things, like as for example, if you are renting right now, understanding how a mortgage works is not relevant to you. But then once you have a solid financial foundation because you've gone over the basics, then now you're at a point where when that becomes relevant to you, when you decide, okay, I want to buy a home, you have more of a solid understanding that can help you understand the different topics that become relevant to you as your life changes.
100%. I also think it's important to remember that you might be telling yourself that things are hard, I'm not financially literate as like an excuse to not be disciplined with your finances. Like if you are sitting here saying, "Well, I don't know everything about investing, so I'm just bad with money." That's just you allowing yourself to continue to not be disciplined with your spending habits. Like you don't have to know everything in order to just get started, and getting started is probably just going to look like starting to track your spending and starting to get a grasp on where your day-to-day expenses are going. Then you can learn other things as you go, like you said. The other thing that I tell myself all the time, and this is applicable to both managing money and also making money, is that anything is possible with consistent work. And I particularly say consistent work to replace that with hard work, because I think a lot of times we tell ourselves like, okay, well, if I want to hit my goal, like that's going to be hard. No, it's going to require you being consistent. It's not going to be hard. It's going to be simple in practice. Consistency is hard. Yes, you have to have discipline and all of that. However, if you're telling yourself this is going to be hard, it's going to be hard to manage my money because I'm not financially literate. No, it's not going to be hard. It's going to require discipline and consistency. So that's also
Yeah.
kind of like a belief and a way you can reframe it as well.
And I think too, when you're thinking, is it hard or is it challenging? Because hard to me is like, that's like hard, period. End of sentence. If I look at it as, oh, that might be challenging because it's going to challenge a part of me or challenge a skill that I don't yet have. Like, for example, I don't lift weights anymore. I used to lift weights like years ago. I don't do that anymore. If I was going to go to the gym, like let's say I said, I want to go to the gym 5 times a week and lift weights, that's not necessarily going to be hard. It's going to be challenging. Am I up for a challenge? Is my desire for the result worth challenging myself? There might be times where I show up and I don't know what I'm doing. I might have to ask somebody, hey, how the heck you use this machine? Or like, hey, where are the weights at? Like, there might be questions that I have to ask. Okay, am I up for the challenge or no? Like, and do I desire the outcome so much that I'm willing to challenge myself to get there? And I think that looking at it that way too, as okay, it might be a challenge, but it's like, yeah, am I up for it or not? And if you're not, like, all right, but just know that like you might not get the result you want on the other side. But I think sometimes when we look at it as, oh, that's hard, it's easy to just like dismiss that and again be like hard, end of sentence, like whatever. But I think when we look at it as okay, yeah, objectively it might be challenging because I haven't built the skill of discipline or I haven't built the knowledge base of investing. So yeah, it might be a bit challenging for me to read articles on investing that I don't fully understand, and it's going to take me a little bit to understand that, but I want to build wealth, so I'm going to challenge myself to do that. Okay. And then once you challenge yourself to it and you show up with the consistency that you're talking about, like you can get there. Nobody listening to this is like unable to understand finances. Like if you're listening to these types of podcasts, like you got it, girl. Like
You
you have
got
a
it, girl.
desire to
Yes.
learn. You are smart. You can understand it. I promise you.
Yes, 100%. I feel like this is a good place to end today's episode because we got through our entire list. But I feel like because money, and when I say money, I'm talking about both managing your money and also increasing your income and wealth building, because we talked about both in today's episode. Obviously, it's so personal. And I feel like everyone has like different things that they are either like working through, or maybe this episode is like bringing up things for you that you know you want to work through, feel free. And you can obviously not leave personal information there if you don't want to, but feel free to like leave those in Spotify. And if there are certain things that you want us to cover in a future episode about money mindset and money beliefs and all of that, because we could definitely do a follow up. I feel like we do these types of episodes once every like 6 or so months because we have a couple other ones on our podcast as well. So definitely leave those in Spotify. But thanks for tuning into the podcast. And until next week.